The first thing he noticed about the company headquarters was that the marble floor probably cost more than his apartment building. The second thing he noticed was that nobody looked happy. Executives marched across the lobby clutching glowing tablets like they were carrying nuclear launch codes. Receptionists smiled with the dead eyes of hostages. Somewhere above the 60-story glass tower, drones circled giant holographic advertisements announcing the upcoming historic international defense partnership. A $4 billion deal. And somehow the man responsible for securing it was standing near the front desk holding a cardboard tray with 6 coffees because human resources had mistaken him for temporary service staff. He stared at the visitor badge clipped to his wrinkled jacket. Temp hospitality assistant. Fantastic, he muttered. Years of negotiation training across 3 galaxies, and I've finally achieved my dream of becoming a caffeine Neo. The receptionist didn't even look up. Conference room on level 42. And hurry. The executives start crying if their oat milk gets cold. He sighed and grabbed the elevator. His suit looked terrible. That wasn't entirely his fault. The airline had lost his luggage after rerouting him through lunar Singapore, and he'd spent the night sleeping inside a spaceport noodle bar beside a snoring cargo pilot, and a man trying to marry a vending machine. By the time the elevator doors opened, he smelled faintly like cheap coffee and exhaustion. Employees glanced at him with the same expression rich people used when spotting wildlife too close to their cars. Then disaster happened. He turned the corner just as a woman stormed out of the executive hallway while yelling into her phone. She was stunning in the terrifying way expensive people usually were. Sharp heels. Designer white suit. Perfect makeup. The kind of confidence only produced by extreme wealth and never hearing the word no during childhood. And if legal says we can't threaten them, she snapped into the phone, then hire scarier lawyers. She spun the corner. Directly into him. Coffee exploded everywhere. The hallway went silent. Dark liquid splashed across her white jacket, her tablet, and most importantly, her designer shoes. For 3 full seconds nobody breathed. Then she looked down slowly like a woman witnessing her own murder. You, she whispered. He looked at the ruined coffee tray. Technically this feels like a team effort. The nearby employees immediately pretended to study the walls. Her face turned red. Do you have any idea how much these shoes cost? Based on your reaction? Roughly the GDP of a small moon. One intern choked trying not to laugh. That made everything worse. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. What department are you from? Negotiations. Janitorial? Close enough. Oh my God! She rubbed her forehead like the universe itself had offended her. This is exactly why my father's company is collapsing. Nobody competent works here anymore. He raised an eyebrow. You know, most people say good morning before the public execution. I am not joking. She pointed toward the elevator. You're fired. The entire hallway froze harder. A security guard whispered. Ma'am, I don't think temporary staff can technically be fired by. Then invent a way. Employees began secretly recording with their phones. He stared at her for a moment, strangely calm. Usually powerful people screamed when they were afraid. He'd seen it in politicians, military officers, casino owners, and once in an alien prince wearing leather pants. This woman wasn't angry because of coffee. She was terrified. Still, humiliation was humiliation. He handed the ruined tray to a nervous intern. Good luck with the investor meeting. She laughed sarcastically. Right. Because the coffee guy knows about billion-dollar negotiations. You'd be surprised. Security awkwardly escorted him toward the elevators like disappointed babysitters. The doors opened. And suddenly every executive in the hallway received alerts on their devices simultaneously. The international investors had arrived. Outside the tower, black armored limousines floated above the street, while massive alien bodyguards stepped onto the red carpet. Reporters screamed questions. Camera drones flashed through the air. The chairman of the investor group emerged wearing a glowing silver suit and expensive sunglasses despite it being indoors. He looked around once, then frowned. Where? The chairman asked coldly. Is the human negotiator who saved my life in Singapore? Nobody answered. The CEO's daughter slowly turned toward the elevator. But the coffee guy was already gone. The silence inside the executive conference room became so heavy it felt medically dangerous. The alien chairman removed his silver glasses very slowly. That somehow made the situation worse. Around the massive glass table, executives sat frozen with fake smiles stretched across faces already leaking sweat. One vice president looked moments away from confessing crimes nobody had accused him of yet. The CEO's daughter forced a laugh. He's preparing. The chairman blinked. Preparing what? Our negotiating atmosphere. The translator device clipped to his collar paused. Then repeated in a robotic voice. The female human claims your negotiator is emotionally marinating. Several alien investors nodded thoughtfully. One whispered, Human rituals are complex. She nearly collapsed with relief. Yes. Exactly. Emotional marinating. Inside her mind, however, absolute panic had begun eating the furniture. Her father was still trapped aboard a delayed orbital flight with no communication signal. The board members were staring at her like hungry wolves. And somewhere outside the building wanted the one man capable of saving the largest deal in company history. The same man she had fired because coffee touched her shoes. A trembling executive leaned toward her. Do you know who that was? Apparently not. That was him. Who? The closer. Every color vanished from her face. The closer. The legendary negotiator responsible for impossible contracts, ceasefires, and corporate mergers across half the galaxy. Stories about him circulated through executive circles like urban legends. Some claimed he once ended a trade war during a poker game. Another rumor said he negotiated a mining treaty while drunk and half-naked inside a floating casino. She remembered his wrinkled jacket. Oh no. Meanwhile, 30 blocks away, the former coffee assistant sat inside a tiny noodle shop beside a laundromat and a store selling illegal emotional support reptiles. He happily slurped spicy noodles while watching news alerts explode across his cracked phone screen. Urgent, investor meeting delayed. Corporate stock falls 8%. Rumors of internal disaster. He grinned. Best first day ever. The old woman running the noodle shop pointed at the screen. You work there? Worked there for 7 beautiful minutes. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped a bowl. Back at the tower, things were deteriorating rapidly. One alien investor became offended after an executive accidentally compared his species to aggressive seahorses. Another demanded ceremonial meats. Nobody knew what ceremonial meats were. The CEO's daughter stood near the conference room window aggressively massaging her temples when security approached carefully. We found him. 20 minutes later she arrived at the noodle shop in a self-driving luxury car worth more than several countries. And there he was. Still eating noodles. Still calm. Still somehow irritatingly attractive despite looking like a man who lost the fight against public transportation. He glanced up. Those shoes survived the tragedy? She ignored the comment. You need to come back. Interesting. This morning I was workplace garbage. I made a mistake. You made several. The coffee was only one of them. The noodle shop owner openly listened while pretending to clean spoons. The CEO's daughter inhaled slowly. Look, the investors specifically requested you. Crazy coincidence. They refused to sign without you. Sounds stressful. It's $4 billion. He pointed at his noodles. And this is $6. Yet somehow I'm enjoying my situation more. She clenched her jaw hard enough to frighten nearby furniture. Fine. What do you want? An apology would be emotionally refreshing. I already apologized. You called me coffee guy during the apology. That was accidental. You literally said, listen, coffee guy. Her face burned red. The noodle shop owner quietly whispered. She's losing. I am not losing. She snapped. You're absolutely losing, the negotiator said. For the first time all day, she noticed something strange. He wasn't intimidated by her. Not even slightly. Most people around her either flattered her, feared her, or wanted something. But this man looked at her like she was simply another exhausted human being making bad decisions in expensive clothing. It was annoyingly attractive. Her phone suddenly rang. The board chairman screamed through the speaker loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "A rival corporation just contacted the investors." The negotiator raised an eyebrow. "Oh, now that's funny." She grabbed his arm before he could stand. "Please." The word surprised both of them. Her voice softened slightly. "If this deal dies, my father's company collapses." He looked at her hand still gripping his sleeve. Then at her eyes. For the first time since they met, she didn't look arrogant. She looked scared. He should have said no. Honestly, every logical part of his brain told him to finish the noodles, accept the rival corporation's offer, and enjoy watching the spoiled executives suffer the consequences of weaponized stupidity. Instead, 30 minutes later, he found himself sitting beside her in the back of a luxury vehicle speeding toward the corporate tower, while she stress-typed messages hard enough to damage the touchscreen. "You're gripping the tablet like it insulted your ancestors," he said. "It might have. You always this calm during disasters?" "I grew up poor. Everything is a disaster. That's why this feels nostalgic." She stared at him for a second before accidentally laughing. The sound surprised both of them. It was small. Real. Completely different from the sharp corporate voice she used in meetings. Unfortunately, peace lasted exactly 12 seconds. Her phone rang again. One of the executives sounded close to cardiac arrest. "The alien investors think you two are secretly bonded." She blinked. "What?" "The chairman saw her begging you in the noodle shop's security footage," the executive whispered. "Apparently on his planet, public emotional vulnerability is considered a mating ritual." The negotiator leaned back slowly. "Oh, this is getting dangerous." "It gets worse," the executive continued. "The investors now believe your emotional connection guarantees negotiation honesty." Silence filled the car. Then he started laughing. Not normal laughter. The exhausted, broken laughter of a man watching reality finally collapse under its own stupidity. She rubbed her forehead. "Why are you enjoying this?" "Because your billion-dollar investors just turned us into intergalactic Romeo and Juliet." Chairman Vex doubled down immediately. The moment they entered the tower, the massive alien grabbed the negotiator's shoulders proudly. "You chose a fierce mate," the chairman announced. "She threatened to arrest me this morning. A dominant courtship strategy." Executives nearby pretended not to hear anything. The CEO's daughter forced a smile so painful it looked supernatural. "We are not dating." The translator device beeped. Then announced loudly. "Human female requests more aggressive mating schedule." Every person in the hallway froze. One in turn walked directly into a wall. The negotiator covered his face while laughing again. "I'm never financially recovering from this." Things spiraled immediately afterward. The investors insisted on observing human bonding rituals before negotiations resumed, which somehow led to a private dinner reservation overlooking the city skyline while 3 alien executives watched from another table taking notes. Every second became torture. When he pulled out her chair, the aliens applauded respectfully. When she touched his arm accidentally, one investor whispered, "Passionate." When the waitress flirted with him, the CEO's daughter became irrationally irritated for reasons she absolutely refused to examine. "Oh wow," he said casually after the waitress left. "You look jealous." I looked annoyed. "Same facial expression?" "Eat your food." He smirked, and continued eating expensive steak like a man completely unaware he was destroying her emotional stability. The worst part was that the fake relationship started feeling disturbingly natural. Away from the office, she finally stopped acting like a corporate machine. She talked about growing up under impossible expectations. About spending her entire life trying to prove she deserved respect instead of inheriting it. "My father built everything from nothing," she admitted quietly while city lights reflected in the restaurant windows. "Everyone thinks I'm just some spoiled executive princess. You are kind of terrifying." "Thank you. But terrified people usually become terrifying." That made her pause. "And you?" she asked softly. He leaned back in his chair. "I learned negotiations in refugee stations, casinos, cargo docks, places where one bad conversation gets someone killed." "You joke a lot for someone with that background. Humor is cheaper than therapy." For the first time since meeting him, she looked at him without judgment. And for the first time in years, she laughed without pretending. The sound hit him harder than expected. Unfortunately, that exact moment became catastrophic. Because across the restaurant, hidden behind decorative plants, several executives secretly recorded the romantic progress for the alien investors. And standing near the entrance with absolute fury on his face was her father. The CEO had returned early. The CEO looked like a man seconds away from either firing everyone alive or launching a missile at the building out of pure stress. He stormed across the restaurant while executives hiding behind decorative plants scattered in panic like hunted animals. "What," he said slowly, "is happening?" Nobody answered. Mostly because nobody fully understood anymore. His daughter stood up immediately. "Dad, I can explain." "You fired him?" Straight to the point. "Impressive." She froze. The negotiator quietly continued eating steak. "To be fair, I did attack her with coffee." The CEO turned toward him with the exhausted expression of a billionaire who had not slept in 3 days. "Please tell me you're joking." "He's not," one executive whispered from behind a plant. The CEO closed his eyes briefly like his soul was leaving his body. Meanwhile, Chairman Vex entered the restaurant with several alien investors behind him. The massive chairman instantly sensed tension. "Ah," he announced proudly. "The female's father arrives to inspect the mating alliance." The restaurant became silent again. The CEO blinked twice. "The what?" Nobody wanted that conversation. Unfortunately, there was no time for emotional recovery because another executive rushed into the restaurant nearly hyperventilating. "The rival corporation has entered negotiations." That changed everything. Within an hour, the entire boardroom became war. Holographic contracts floated above the massive table while alien investors argued in 3 languages simultaneously. Rival executives attempted aggressive offers. Lawyers screamed about exclusivity clauses. One intern actually fainted from stress near the coffee machine. And through all of it, the negotiator remained calm. Completely calm. He leaned back in his chair while studying every contract projection carefully. Then he smiled slightly. "That clause is fake." The rival executive stiffened. He pointed lazily toward the hologram. "Page 72. Hidden acquisition penalty. You plan to strip their weapons patents after the merger." Chairman Vex's eyes narrowed dangerously. The rival negotiator began sweating instantly. "That is standard procedure." "No," the human interrupted. "That's attempted fraud wrapped in legal vocabulary." Chaos exploded. Alien investors began shouting. Lawyers pulled up hidden files. Executives started accusing each other of corruption. One security guard quietly backed toward the exit like he wanted no part of surviving the meeting. The negotiator stood slowly. Then took complete control of the room. He dismantled every rival argument with terrifying ease. He redirected financial leverage. He exposed hidden manipulation tactics. He even convinced the alien investors to increase their investment after reframing the crisis as proof of human adaptability. The CEO watched in stunned silence. His daughter watched even more closely. Because the terrifying negotiator who could dominate billion-dollar discussions was still the same exhausted man who ate cheap noodles and made jokes during disasters. Chairman Vex finally slammed both massive hands onto the table. "Humans are terrifying," he declared proudly. "You transform embarrassment into tactical advantage. That's basically our species summary," the negotiator admitted. Then came the final humiliation. A nervous employee accidentally connected the wrong presentation file to the boardroom screen. Security footage filled the holographic display. The entire room watched the CEO's daughter screaming at the negotiator over spilled coffee. "You're fired!" Replay. "You're fired!" Replay again from another employee's phone angle. The board members stared in absolute horror. The negotiator nearly choked trying not to laugh. His daughter covered her face with both hands. "I'm going to die." "No," he whispered beside her. "But this is going to become an incredible training video." Even Chairman Vex laughed hard enough to shake the table. Finally, after the chaos settled, the contracts were signed. $4 billion. The largest deal in company history. The CEO stood afterward and looked directly at the negotiator. "You could ask for anything right now." The room became silent. Money. Power. Executive control. Instead, the negotiator adjusted his wrinkled jacket calmly. Better healthcare for lower employees. Fair hiring systems. And maybe stop treating interns like emotional support furniture. Several interns almost cried. The CEO stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly nodded. Done. His daughter looked at him differently after that. Not like a problem. Not like a janitor. Not even like the legendary closer. She looked at him like a man she genuinely admired. Which honestly terrified her more than the billion-dollar negotiations. As the investors celebrated around them, she stepped closer awkwardly. "So," she said quietly, "maybe I could make it up to you with dinner sometime." He raised an eyebrow. "You promising not to fire me before dessert?" A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Chairman Vex suddenly wrapped massive arms around both of them. "Excellent!" the alien roared. "The mating alliance survives! We celebrate at the Casino Moon!" The negotiator sighed. "I knew this day would somehow get worse." Then she accidentally bumped his arm. Coffee spilled directly onto her own expensive shoes. The entire boardroom exploded with laughter.